to Creation in the 21st Century. I'm your host, Carl Ball, founder and director of the Creation Evidence Museum in Glen Rose, Texas. You are going to see something on the program today that has never been exposed to an audience before. A handful of private research individuals have seen what you're going to see, but no audience has ever seen some very special research fossils for the very first time. So the title of this program is Overwhelming Evidence. Now, the museum that I founded and am currently director of is titled Creation Evidence Museum. And as a museum, we're looking for evidence. We go where the data lead. In fact, as a young man in my career, I had been taught that evolution was true. I had been taught that it was not a question of research. It had been an established fact, and I embraced evolutionary theory because I was taught that it was true. However, in time, I learned that it was not true. You're going to be a part of a research project in process this very day. I've asked to come on the program with me a personal, dear friend and respected colleague who received his PhD in science education from the University of Virginia and is an established career researcher, scientist, lecturer, and now a creation leader. Dr. Charles Jackson, welcome back to the program.
Always good to be back, Dr. Ball.
Now, I believe as a young man, you too, in your career, embraced evolutionary theory. Is that right?
Well, it was all I was taught, yes.
Correct. All we were taught. We were not exposed to evidence. What changed you?
Well, the church didn't change me. No one really challenged evolution in my church upbringing. It wasn't until I actually met the Savior. Then I knew, because He is the living Word.
Yes, He is.
And I knew the Word was true. It shocked me, because if Jesus was real in my heart then,
yes,
I knew that all the Bible had to be true, and I knew Adam and Eve had to be real. I knew that Noah's flood had to have happened. A virgin had a baby. Dead guys can get up and walk. And Jesus spit mud on someone's eyes, and a blind guy could see and heal leprosy with a touch. Those kinds of things are things that science says cannot happen, but they're miracles. So I found out miracles were actually true because there's a miracle maker.
A miracle maker, and a miracle was performed in your own heart, mind, and disposition.
Yes.
And as a scientist, you have done research demonstrating that creation is valid scientific evidence.
Well, certainly, just going together with all the data that's been gathered by all the researchers in the world, you know, you can look at the data from 2 different angles, well, 20 different angles if you like, and you can be fooled into thinking the data means something else. It's like a crime scene. Everybody's got their theory, but only one way is how it happened.
And we would like to find out how it really happened.
Absolutely.
Let's start with a quote that you provided. An eminent evolutionary scholar has been wise enough to state that it's either one way or the other. You and I have a lot of friends, many who try to accommodate evolutionary theory and hold on to the Bible in one hand and hold on to evolutionary theory in the other. And let's clarify some issues, because not all audiences have watched all the programs previously. There is microevolution or microvariation, and then there is macroevolution, or evolution as we normally know it in the public view. Microevolution or microvariation is change within genetic boundary, adaptability, and the so-called junk DNA, which is not junk at all, actually helps to program how the proteins will express themselves in a given environment. Is that correct? And you have a PhD in the field of scientific education or science education.
Surely, all what you just said is true. The macroevolution is true only in the sense that it's a theory. That's what the theory says, and that's the true statement. But actually saying that it happens or has ever been observed, or proven at all, that's not true.
Correct.
Yeah.
But microvariation has occurred and would be expected to occur in the creation design. Adaptability to an environment or loss of genetic information due to various deleterious effects.
Just random genetic drift with random population crossbreedings and certainly mutations. Those kinds of things, popping up of certain genes more frequently than others, those things are predicted by the creation model also.
Certainly. But now, this eminent professor, evolutionary professor, spelled it out. You can't have it both ways. Would you talk to us about what you provided here in his statement?
Sure. This is an old quote, but Dr. Provine is still very active in the atheist community, in the evolutionist community, and he said this in The Scientist magazine. Some scientists, along with many liberal theologians, suggest that God set up the universe in the beginning and/or works through the laws of nature, and that things just went on without him directly having to interfere. And he says this kind of compromise thinking is a silly way of trying to have one's cake and eat it too, and I'd have to agree.
I would agree as well.
I think you can be a scientist and a Christian. I don't understand being an evolutionist and a Christian. The article is called "Scientists Face It, Science and Religion Are Incompatible," but in this quote he doesn't actually say it that way. Let's go on. He says that this silly thing is equivalent to the claim that science and religion are compatible if the religion is effectively indistinguishable from atheism.
And I certainly would agree with him. It's one way or the other. In fact, let's spell out for this audience the icon of evolutionary theory, and that is the geologic column. This is called the Tower of Time. It postulates, and again, this audience needs to know it's a postulation. This is never observed anywhere on planet Earth. It's a concept, a naturalistic concept, suggesting that about 3.5 billion years ago, early bacteria evolved, and then about 560 million years ago, in the dim, distant Paleozoic era, living systems began to develop, crustaceans developed, the great sharks developed, conifer trees began to develop, and then you have the close of this in Permian. Then you have the introduction. You have the Permian and the Carboniferous, and then you have the introduction to the middle, the Mesozoic era of the reptiles, the dinosaurs, and then the introduction of the mammals in the Cenozoic era. So thus you have a graduation of evolutionary development and complicated living systems. However, Dr. Jackson, I'm sure you would agree with me that the systems, even bacteria, are incredibly complex, like the bacterial flagellum, able to run at 50,000 revolutions per minute and yet turn and reverse directions in 1/2 revolution. And I don't know if we'll have time to talk about that since we want to expose some new information, but everything is complicated. There are no simple living systems.
Absolutely. The simplest form of life, even the first bacteria that an evolutionist could imagine, would be wildly more complex than your average person would even imagine.
Yes, yes. So it's one way or the other. Either we came by evolution with no justification for the process, no mechanism to explain it, or we have a beneficent divine creator that we've met.
Either way, it requires a miracle.
It requires a miracle either way. Now for a moment, since this is a research project in process, I'll mention for the first time to any public audience one of the tracks that we excavated called the Bioanthropos series. Not in any way referring to the director of the excavation, but Bioplan is the basic plan. So in our opinion, these individuals were superior individuals. This is a 16-inch footprint, a rare one where you have the great toe, the other toes, the phalanges trench, then you have the ball of the foot, but we found a handprint.